Today we're taking a look at some of the best putters 2020 has to offer. Now, putters are one of my favourite things to test, so I've really enjoyed going through the process to get this review ready. Now I'm going to talk through some of my favourite things about each of the putters and also what I found when I've tested them. I've also put these all on a robot using the Quintic system, and this uses high-speed cameras to take a look at how the ball and the club head are moving through impact. So as you can tell, there's a lot to go through, so you better get comfy. So I had over 20 putters when I started this test, which was quite a large number. So for the brands who submitted quite a few, I've tried to pick one mallet, one kind of mid mallet and one blade. Now if we start with TaylorMade, I went for the TB1 Trust for my blade offering. Now I have to say initially out of the two Trust models, this wasn't the one that drew my eye, but now I think I have actually done a full 360 on this. Once you put this down over the ball, the shaping and the style does look really sleek, and actually it looks pretty traditional in the address position. Now, a massive part of the appeal of this club to me is just how easy it is to align, and in my testing this is one of the key things that it did best for. I was lining this up really well to the centre of the hole, which sounds simple, but it isn't always that easy. Now, I love the technology in TaylorMade putter faces. They always produce a really good roll whenever I test them, and I've seen these throughout the putters I've tested. Now, the Spider FCG really intrigued me because it's quite different technology and quite different concept to what we've seen in putters recently. And I have to say I really love the look of this. I think it's also an excellent medium point for that kind of player who wants the feel of a blade but just needs a little bit extra forgiveness. With the testing on Quintic, I was really impressed with the quality of roll of this. With this forward CG, we were just getting a really consistent forward roll, we weren't getting any backspin, and that's just really going to help with the consistency of your pace putting. Now I also found this out on the course. Straight away I could feel on those long putts, I was really dialing in the distance very well. I think this is really important for a lot of club golfers because it's definitely somewhere where people struggle. Now the last TaylorMade putter in this test is the Spider S. And visually I think they've done a great job with this. I love the colourways, and I also just think it offers something a bit different to the rest of the Spider range, who's someone who wants that forgiveness but perhaps just didn't like the style of the other offerings. Now we still got good data on this in terms of ball roll, but I would say for me it just didn't feel quite as stable as some of the other offerings. It was quite surprising to me because initially I thought with the shape and styling of this would probably be the one I prefer. Traditionally I do like a larger mallet, but I actually found myself moving towards the two of the smaller models and just finding that I preferred the looks and the feel of them over this. This just didn't feel quite as stable to me. Now if we move over to Odyssey, I also had three models here. So I had the Seattle Toulon, the Stroke Lab Black 10, and then a triple track double wide. Now for me I would have to say the Toulon was definitely the biggest surprise. Obviously when you pick this up compared to the rest of the range, it probably is visually the nicest in terms of finish and colour, and you can definitely tell there's a high level of craftsmanship, but initially for me I wasn't too keen on the shape. In fact it probably would have been my least favourite of the three. But when I got this on Quintic and started messing around and testing with it, this was actually the best putter that I tested throughout the year in terms of being able to line it up with the hole. Now this really confused me because it was like, usually you pick a putter on something that you like the looks of and you perceive you're going to align well. But then this goes like the complete reverse, and I guess it really was a big eye-opener for me, and definitely something people should just consider when they're picking the putters. Make sure when you pick a new putter up and you're genuinely considering buying it, that you get someone to check if you can line it up. Now, over the year I kept testing this more and I grew to like it even more, and when we put it on Quintic the data was really good in terms of roll and consistency. Obviously I don't think you'd expect anything less from Odyssey, but I think it was a big eye-opener to me in terms of not always just picking a putter on the thing that's your favourite. Now we could also go to the opposite extreme of this. If we look at the Stroke Lab Black 10, this was probably one of my favourite visuals when I first picked it up, and I think it's because this clear white alignment aid just really stands out against the rest of the black of the putter, and it's just a really good strong visual. But then I found when I tested this, I was literally aiming like a ball left of the hole when I was trying to aim the middle of the hole, so for me, I don't line this up really well, but I think this is a great visual and it's a great looking putter, so it's going to be a really good option for lots of people. Now also we've got the different face in this compared to the mill of the Toulon putter. We're still getting really good consistency in terms of roll. And it was also really interesting to test these Stroke Lab shafts because we were seeing, compared to some of the other clubs, the consistency of kind of the club acceleration throughout the ball was a lot better when these shafts were used. So definitely some really interesting tech from Odyssey which is going to benefit people. Then the final putter I looked at here, I'm not sure if you can necessarily class it as a blade. It was the triple track double wide. So nearly. I guess that's me trying to push it as near as a mallet as possible. And for me, visually, I did find this a little bit busy at first. Obviously, you've got the black of the putter frame and the triple track pattern in the middle. I think in a club such as the 2-ball, this looks really great and it just looks perfect on the club, but sometimes it does look a bit busy. So I wouldn't say I don't like the look of it, I just think it looks a little bit busy over the ball. So I wasn't sure how well this was going to perform for me. But actually, when we put it on Quintic, in terms of all variables across the board, this was one of the best putters we had. So yeah, really consistent in terms of ball roll, ball speed, club head speed. And obviously that's really important. If you're hitting the same club head speed into every shot and the ball's coming out at different speeds every time, you're not going to be able to control good pace. So Odyssey have done a really good job with all three of these, but in terms of performance, I think this was the best. Okay, Axis1 Rose. Probably one of the most unusual looking putters, not only in this test, but also on the market. Now, this is thanks to the big large heel weight, which does take some getting used to over the ball, I'm not gonna lie, but after a while it really just does become second nature. Now, Justin Rose puts this in play for a reason. This really does feel so stable throughout the ball and you pick this up really quickly. I also love the way it sits at address. You don't feel like you have to fight it to get to square like you do with some putters. And this was also a really high performer in terms of club face consistency at impact, stability of face rotation, and consistency of ball roll. Okay, this is the Ben Hogan BH-B02 putter. Now, it's probably not the first putter you would think of when you come to a best putters video, but I've actually been really impressed with how this performed this year. I think it looks great, from the matte black finish down to the intricate detail on the club face, and I really do like the feel of this milled face, even though I would say the sound is slightly higher pitched than you might expect. Now, at £186, this definitely is the best value putter in this test. Okay, Scotty Cameron. I have to say as a side note here, if we were doing a category for best putter covers, these would win. I mean, just look at them. I've gone for 3 different putters here. So we've got the Phantom X12, which straight away was definitely just like my favourite putter in this range. Visually it's a bit wacky, but I don't think it's too much for all the average consumers, and it definitely just caught my eye straight off the bat. I've had Scotty Cameron putters in the past that are very similar shaping to this, I think probably previous iterations of this, so I was really excited to test this out. And it didn't disappoint me at all. I really do love the colour contrast, especially these 2 bright yellow sight lines that frame the ball. I think it really visually helps me with alignment. I also like how we've got a full milled face on this year instead of a slight insert. And generally I just really liked the feel and the way this rolled out on the green. Now when we move into the special select range, I've gone for the Newport 2 and the Flowback 5. Now visually for me, I do prefer this larger shape, but obviously this is a much more traditional offering, and this is something which a lot of people will just come for from the special select lineup. People just want that traditional putter and they want that traditional Scotty putter, so there's a lot of people who, regardless of what I say about tech or say I prefer the Phantom 12, will just want this one, and that is fine. And I think, to be honest, they've done a great job with the looks this year. It's a lot sleeker and cleaner in terms of lines than the previous iterations, and I really do like that. If you're a Scotty lover and if you're someone who loves a traditional putter, you're really going to like all the putters in these range. But I would say for me, I would like to see kind of the sight lines coming right to the front of the putter. That is something I struggle with a bit, whereas on the Phantom 12 I've got that option of the dot right at the front. So I think visually for me, that's why I ear towards the Phantom rather than towards these in terms of alignment. I would describe this as probably the blade of putters. You know what you're getting, you're going to get a really good feel, a good quality of roll, but if you're wanting that extra forgiveness and stability, you're probably better going for one of the bigger options. And for me, I really like this because I feel like it frames the ball well. We've got these kind of extra sight lines created from the different heights here, and for me I think that sits really nicely behind the ball. Across the board, these weren't too dissimilar in terms of performance in the data, but the Phantom 12 did perform the best. It was just getting more consistent face control, face rotation and ball speed, so for me between these 3 that was definitely the winner. Okay, the Lab Direct Force 2.1 putter. I have had so many questions about this since I did the review earlier in the year. And generally this is just well known for its unusual shape and styling off the back of Adam Scott using it out on tour. But throughout the year in my testing, I found it has produced an exceptionally true consistent roll. Now, We couldn't actually get this into the robot because the size of the grip was too big. So I just tested this by hand on the Quintic system, which obviously isn't consistent with the rest of the clubs, but still in terms of ball roll, I was really impressed. I love the alignment options on here, but it is worth noting you can customize this on the website. So if you know there's a certain sight line that you prefer, you can get this added on, which I think is really beneficial. Another great thing about this is just how consistent it is for pace putting. I found it really improved my pace control. From Ping, I tested 2 putters from the Hepler range this year, the Answer 2 and the Tomcat. Now, I think Ping have absolutely nailed it with the colours this year. It definitely reminds me of that traditional copper colour you saw in some of the early Answers. But I love the colour contrast here and the fact that they've added that black in certain areas. I never really like the look of a blade, it just doesn't suit my eye, but with the colour contrast and the shaping that's going on here, I was really drawn to this putter. It gives you a great visual and it really helps you with your alignment. Another great feature in this range is the adjustable shaft offering. So usually for me, I find that I want to cut putters down and I end up with them quite short, but then the weighting's never quite right, and it's always this constant battle between having the right length putter and having the head weighted correctly. Now with this, I don't have to worry at all. You just put the adjuster tool in the top of the grip and twist it down to the length you want, which is ideal, and I love the way that works. You can also see Ping have gone for a very smooth face on these this year, and I actually really liked the way that felt. At first I wasn't sure how I was going to feel about it, but it felt really nice and solid and gave me a really consistent roll. Now the Tomcat is definitely a completely different visual to this, and it's definitely more hit and miss in terms of if people are going to love and hate it. For me, shock, I liked it, and I especially liked the dot alignment cues on the top that have taken their visuals from runways. This has actually become a big favourite in my household, and it's definitely my dad's favourite put-out go-to companion in his work breaks. And I don't blame him. The size and the weighting is really going to help with that extra stability, but I also found in testing this performed really well in terms of consistent club head and ball speed. Okay, last but definitely not least, we've got Evnroll. Now, it's not often I like a blade style, but I think Evnroll have done a really great job with the ER2 here. I think part of the appeal for me is definitely the black visual of the club head matching in with the shaft. I also think having this wider blade option is really great because lots of people want that visual of a blade, but they want that little bit extra stability. Now, Evnroll pack a lot of technology into their putters, so it's no surprise these performed really well across the board. But it might surprise you to know that the best was actually the Outback, which is good news for me because it's definitely the style I like. It showed more stability in terms of face rotation than the other models, which definitely makes sense in terms of the size, the distribution of the weighting, which is going to give you that extra MOI. Now again, I really like the sight lines that are on here. I do think these kind of black dots for the alignment in the centre could stand out a bit more. That is something I'd like to see. But it does sit really nicely behind the ball. It sits really square. It also reminds me of the Axis in that way. They both sit really nicely. They don't feel like they're trying to twist open or closed. So I really like that behind the ball. Now finally we've got the ER8. This is definitely more classic in terms of the colouring. If that's something that you prefer, it definitely looks a bit more traditional than the other offerings, definitely compared to the Outback. I think this is a really nice simple shape that a lot of people are going to like because it's giving you extra stability, but it's not too wacky or out there. And it's also got a really strong sense of alignment in terms of lines, which sometimes gets lost in a curved putter. Again, we saw these rolled really well off the face, which you would expect with the tech packed in here. I would say there was quite a lot of loft on these when we first set them up, which definitely would suit the UK, especially now as we're going into winter. You want a bit more loft on your putter, but going into summer you might want to knock that down a little bit. Okay, so that's a rundown of how I've got on with all these putters this year. But this is the best putters video, so I need to kind of crown a winner, right? Now across the testing on Quintic, but also my own personal data I've done just on the putting green and out on the golf course, there was 3 clear winners in terms of performance. So these are the Odyssey triple track double wide, the Axis1 Rose, and the Scotty Cameron Phantom X. Now, I would have liked to add the Lab Direct Force here, but because we couldn't get it in the robot and get the comparative data, it was quite hard to do, but I would also put this in as a 4th, but I have ultimately picked these 3. So now to get 3 down to 1. Personally for me, I just find the visual of the double wide triple track a bit too busy. I really love the triple track idea and I love it on some of the other models such as the 2 ball, but on this model for me I just find it a little bit too much, so I'm going to give it 3rd place for that reason. Okay, 2 left and there can only be 1 winner. I have to say I've done more testing with the Phantom X and I've ultimately ended up feeling more comfortable with this, mainly due to the fact that this has been custom fit to me, so it's all the right length, it's all set up correctly. In the Axis1 Rose, this is just a standard off the rack sample, so it's quite a bit longer, which has definitely affected the feel. And I would also say this standard grip that comes on it feels too small to me, 1 for the way I grip the club and 2 for the weight of the club. So I think in terms of overall weighting, setup, feel, grip, everything that's set up to me, the Phantom X has to be the winner. Not only do I love the shape, the style and the looks, I feel like it lines up really well, I love the feel out of the face, and it's been really consistent out on the course recently. Not just in terms of holing out, but also in terms of pace putting. So the winner of Best Putters 2020 for me is the Scotty Cameron Phantom X. Right, that's all for today. I know we've gone through a lot, so if you have any questions about any of the putters, feel free to put them in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you again soon.